I have the pleasure of having another discussion with Marcel Dixon, Marcel for Congress here. I think the brother should be running in 2024 nonetheless, but in case if you guys are new with Marcel, I'm gonna try to make you familiar with him so you can get behind the brother and support him as many people in the FBA as well as the U.S. freedmen space.
What you are looking at is a monument to Wade Hampton. Wade Hampton was one of the largest enslavers in the state of South Carolina, which was one of the largest slave-holding states. And yet, here on the Capitol grounds, there is a monument to him. If South Carolina wants to recognize and remember this period of history, then it is incumbent upon South Carolina and the United States as a whole to repair the damage that has come from this period in history. At the end of the Civil War, Black Americans who are descendants of American slaves, legislatively called freemen, were supposed to receive their 40 acres in a meal, but that never happened. Instead, they saw their black Wall Streets burnt to the ground. They experienced Jim Crow, they experienced redlining, which robbed them of billions in dollars of wealth. In order for America to heal, Black America has to be repaired. I am running to repair Black America because until we all stand, we all have fallen.
All right, and there's one more for you guys. Again, the brother is still working hard in the grassroots. He is pull up Twitter Spaces. He approaches legislators within South Carolina and other jurisdictions in order to fight for reparations for Black American / U.S. freedmen. So here's another piece with Marcel that I think you guys should be familiar with.
Nicola Hemphill.
We're here in Liberty Hill. If you don't know the history of this part of North Charleston, it's called Liberty Hill because this is a neighborhood that freedmen, after the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of the Civil War, immediately established upon their freedom. As y'all might know, Charleston was literally the slavery capital of America.
We're here today doing an intensive training on organizing for the case for reparations here in South Carolina. We have a full class today. We are enjoying ourselves. Thank you for tuning in.
And this is historic because we cannot get reparations for descendants of American slaves doing any other beneficial policies for us by chasing the people in office and begging them. We have to do it ourselves. So instead of chasing them, we need to organize, run for office, or run and support those running for office to replace them so we can have the power to do the policies for us like every other group does.
It's time for us to get active in South Carolina. We have to move our feet. We have to put some action behind our words. We protest, we lobby, we organize, we mobilize, and this is how we do the work.
And remember, this event is being done. Thank you to the South Carolina Democratic Party. I give y'all a hard time, but I want to give y'all credit. And this is being done by the South Carolina Black Caucus. This is how movements start, by helping to expand the net. And I also want to say, South Carolina, at the end of the Civil War, had more enslaved people percentage-wise than any other state in America. So if there's any state that should be at the forefront of the reparations movement, the tip of the spear, it needs to be South Carolina, especially here in the Low Country.
All right, without further ado, what's going on, Brother Marcel? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very good. How are you?
Nice to see you again. For the people who are not familiar with it, do you mind introducing yourself?
I'm Greg Marcel Dixon. Historically, I've been a teacher by profession. I've recently had a career change, so I'm now doing social work. I'm a proud native of South Carolina, Gullah Geechee. Sometimes we refer to as the Sea Island Creoles. We are native to the coastal plains and Sea Islands, mainly of South Carolina and Georgia, a little bit of coastal North Carolina and Florida as well. And I'm running again for South Carolina U.S. District 6, which is currently held by James Clyburn on a reparations platform.
All right. So we're going to jump right into the interview. We have quite a few good questions I got from different sources, but some of these was established by myself. So what are the most pressing issues in the office you are seeking?
Right now, one of the most pressing issues we are facing is one, education. My district still has some of the lowest performing schools in the United States of America. And unfortunately, I went to the lowest performing school district in not just my district, but also my state. South Carolina is one of the lowest performing states educationally, and I went to the lowest performing school district. So I've had firsthand experience with the educational neglect. Another issue is land theft. Black families here, there's a system called heirs property, where if a person dies who owns some land, did not leave a will, every family gets a share of the property. That may sound good in its appearance, but it's actually a very bad deal. You never get equity, so no one can ever really benefit financially from the property. You can't put anything more on the property than a mobile home. And a lot of times, if a person sold their share of the property, a judge, usually a racist white judge, and usually was a wealthy white person or a white person wanted to buy the land, a judge would force the whole family to sell their land for prices that were much, much cheaper, lower than what the land was worth. Now, partition sales are now illegal, but Black families are still losing their land to tax sales. And you know, land is not just land. Land is wealth. When America gave white Americans 300 million acres during the Homestead Act of 1861, it gave white Americans $10 trillion. Black Americans have lost billions to trillions of dollars in land theft. And my district is ground zero for Black land theft. Another issue is gun violence. The level of gun violence in my community, which is probably not as high as a lot of people think, but it's still unacceptably high. But that comes from poverty, which is an issue. That comes from lack of opportunity. That comes from lack of development. So those are some of the most pressing issues in my district.
Now, you brought up land theft, and this story right here strikes me the most. You know the story about in California about the Bruce's Beach?
Yes.
Three acres of very high value property that was awarded back to the Bruce family. I think they bought it back in 1912 for roughly over $1,000. They had this 82-page I kind of want to call it a contract or limitation, so to speak, under the jurisdiction of LA County, that they will have to go through a stringent procedure in order to develop the land, either commercial or residentially. But they could sell the land for no more than $20 million. And they actually sold the land for exactly $20 million. What's your take? You think they should have kept the land, or do you believe they should have sold the land, or even more so, more money? Because I think the land is valued, if you were to put a hotel on it, like over $100 million over like a 3 to 5 year period.
So one thing I'm going to say is that when people get things that we are due, like when we get our reparations money, we can do whatever we want to do with it. I really hate any argument that gets into, oh, we just going to spend it on, Cadillacs or whatever, which, by the way, hardly no Black person drives anymore, unless you're like my grand uncle.
Very racist trope, by the way.
Right. It's a very racist trope, but it's our money. We can spend it however we choose. You can't tell me to do my money. However, in the case of Bruce's Beach, I feel they should not have sold it. I feel they absolutely should have held on to it and should have developed it and used it to generate more revenue for themselves. Now, of course, it's their right to have sold it, but myself personally, saying this as a person who does not know their circumstances, I would not have sold it. Right now, my family, on my father's side, we have some heirs property. We have 9 acres of coastal pristine property in Beaufort County. It has coastal oaks. It's by the Skull Creek in the Atlantic Ocean. It's by a sea island that is home to millionaires. We have 2 homes in downtown Beaufort that are called Freedmen Cottages because they're a type of architecture of homes that our ancestors built coming right out of slavery. We have some land in my hometown here called Richmond. And my father has been wanting to sell some of the land, and I am strongly against it. My siblings are strongly against it. A lot of young people in my family are strongly against it. Land is wealth. Land is a safety net. Right now, I'm living in my great-grandmother's home that she bequeathed to my aunt. And because of that, I'm able to have a home, but also other members of my family. my family members have had hard times financially, and because of having this land, that we're able to borrow against the value of this land and get money to hold us over during those hard times where we are either without income or our income is not sufficient for the needs we have. So land is a safety net. You can do a lot of things with land. And the number one cause of lynching in America was Black land theft. There's a reason
Absolutely.
they always wanted to take our land from us. So I'm disappointed that they're selling it. I don't know their reason for doing so, but I would have held on to it, especially knowing that's what their great-grandparents wanted, apparently, who were crushed when it was stolen from them.
One of the legislators in the Manhattan area for the LA County of Bruce Beach was stating that by awarding this land back that was stolen, that this is reparations. Do you agree with that?
No. Wait, let me understand. That person is saying that by them selling it back to California, that's reparations?
They were stating by them giving them the land back is reparations, which we understand that if the Bruces would have had that in their lineage,
they would have been millionaires, billionaires by now, probably. So no,
Absolutely.
It would be reparations if you gave them the land back and then gave them the millions, billions of dollars that they would have had you not stole the land in the first place. Their great-grandparents and grandparents and great-great-grandparents were successful Black business owners who had a booming hospitality industry, and they were crushed and economically ruined when California used eminent domain to steal it from them. There is no saying how wealthy they would have been had they not had that land stolen. So it would have been reparations if they would have given them back to land and paid them the millions or billions that they would have had it not been stolen. So that person needs to shut their damn mouth.
I can't agree with you more, brother. I'm going to move to education. Currently, our education system is an institution of anti-Black indoctrination that teaches our kids what to think and not how to think. What can be done to rectify this issue, in your opinion?
Well, for us as descendants of American slaves, Black Americans, we need to have our own schools. The worst decision we made after integration happened, there was something like 80 to 90% of Black teachers lost their jobs. We had control over our children. We had control over what we taught them, and we had the ability to shape them into citizens that would just not give back to our country, but give back to our country in a way that would center us. Now we have all these Black faces in high places that because they look like us, we think they care about us. And we're the last people on their mind, and they show that to us when they do legislation, and they support legislation for all these other groups, but we don't get a dime. There's a problem when you have the Congressional Black Caucus releasing resolutions supporting billions of dollars, over 100 billion being given to Ukrainians, who is a country filled with Nazis, that they had to do a public service announcement. One of those organizations, I don't know if it's Red Cross, United Way, one of them said that if you are Black, you will be called the N-word in Ukraine. They will call you a monkey. You might be physically attacked. And the Congressional Slack Caucus decides to release a resolution saying how it's important that we support Ukrainians, while Black Americans are 60% of the homeless in this nation, but we're 15 to 20% of the population. They released a resolution saying how we need to give illegal immigrants a pathway to citizenship, while Black Americans being murdered on television, while Black Americans' wealth is actually reversing, while Black Americans hold less homes now than they did during the days of Jim Crow. They're putting every other group ahead of us. So not only are we're not the last group on their mind, we're not on their mind at all. Now, in regards to education, how we handle it with school overall, we need to adopt methodology from a pedagogical level where teachers teach, where we teach kids how to think critically. When I was a teacher, and I'm not bragging, but I'm just stating facts, I was an award-winning teacher. I won bonuses for a decade straight because of my student test scores, who will often come to me only 20, 30% reading on grade level, the rest would be 2 or grade level behind. By the time they left, I would have to reverse that pyramid. It will be 70 to 80% reading on or above grade level. And unfortunately, I will still have some percentage that will not on grade level. What I did with my students is I told them, I'm not going to tell you anything. What I'm going to do is give you guiding questions. I'm going to give you clues. I'm going to give you cues, and I'm going to help you draw logical conclusions. And then when you draw that conclusion, I'm going to challenge you. You're going to have to justify why you said that. You're going to have to defend why you concluded that. We need to get back to that. Never tell a kid what they should say. Help them conclude what is logical for them to have arrived.
It kind of leads me into when you say that there's people in high places without faces. But again, I don't know if you was reluctant to say this, but I know that you know that there's a lot of people in these high places that don't share the same lineage and background as you as Freedmen and Foundation of Black Americans. And we have legislation, as you were saying, in Congressional Black Caucus, how they key in these very undermining terms within their website here, stating other marginalized groups. That means all lives matter, essentially. Yeah. Expanding access to capital, contracts, and counseling for minority-owned business, meaning pretty much everybody except Black people. And then promoting U.S. foreign policy initiatives in Africa and other countries that are consistent with the fundamental right of human dignity. Now, if you go to the Hispanic Congressional Caucus, if you go to the Asian one, none of the same language is printed on their website.
Talk about their group. They only talk about their group. We have the weakest representatives, and mark my words, it is far, far, far more damaging to have bad representation than to have no representation. You are always going to be much better off having no representation than having bad and effective representation. You go to the Asian American Pacific Islander Caucus, they are only talking about enriching the lives of Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders. That doesn't mean they don't care about other groups, but they're simply saying we're going to put our demographic first. You go to the Hispanic Caucus, which we know when they say Hispanic, they're talking about the white-looking ones. But when you go to the Hispanic Caucus, they're only talking about enriching the lives of Hispanics and Latinos. Again, that doesn't necessarily mean they are against other groups, but they're putting their group first. Absolutely. You go to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, they only talk about enriching the lives of Native Americans. That doesn't mean they are against other groups getting justice, but they're putting their group first. We are the only group in this country that acts as if it's an offense to put our own demographic first. When Asian Americans were being attacked, which by the way was a blown out of proportion, because now data shows that Black Americans, we've always been over 60% of the people who are targeted for hate crimes, and hate crimes against us actually soared during the pandemic, which we're still in technically officially, but it went up moderately against Asian Americans. Yet, Elaine Hurono and Tammy Duckworth, I think her name is Elaine Hurono of Hawaii, they said, we aren't signing a single piece of legislation until you do something, speaking to their fellow congressmen and congresswomen to protect Asian Americans. They got that Asian American bill that set up a whole separate department of the government specifically to report anti-Asian hate crimes, but has now also spurred initiatives on the state level to give Asian American organizations money. We have way more Black representatives in Congress than Asian and Pacific Islanders do, and we have absolutely nothing to show for it but our wealth going backwards. We own almost no land now, and we have the highest unemployment rate in the nation. And we're doing worse now in many respects than we were during the days of Jim Crow and segregation. During the days of Jim Crow and segregation, our wealth was increasing. Now it's going down. It's regressing. During the days of Jim Crow and segregation, our life expectancy was growing. Our life expectancy has recently shortened. So Black faces in high places is insufficient. And the Congressional Slack Caucus has blood on their hands as far as I'm concerned.
We need Black policies. And then moving to that, here's a great topic here, Marcel. Explain the immigrant crisis in America and why it's a detriment to Foundation Black America and U.S. Freemen, and what is potentially the fix. Now, for example here, now we know we have issues coming from Haiti, anywhere essentially in South America, South America and Central America, as well as Asia. Now, they only really focus on South America, Central America, and Haiti. So what do you believe the crisis of illegal immigration, and what do you believe the fix is?
Well, first of all, illegal immigration has been shown to be absolutely detrimental to Black Americans, the most detrimental to Black American men, especially with a high school diploma or less. It has been shown to decrease wages of Black American men with a high school diploma or less by 60 to 80%. It has been shown to increase the incarceration of Black American men with a high school diploma or less by 20 to 30%. It has been shown to correlate with the unemployment and increase unemployment among Black American men by 10 to 25%. And these are conservative figures. So if any group needs to be concerned about this illegal immigration invasion, because that's what it is. It is Black America. Yeah, we let these Democrats who care about any other group besides the group that keeps up with existence, who are Black Americans, without us doing an event, we let them tell us that somehow illegal immigration is positive for us, which it is actually not. So what needs to be done about it is simple. We need to enforce the immigration law we already have. I cannot stand when people say our immigration system is broken. No, it's not. It is not broken. You just think it's wrong. Just like me having my phone in my hand and we're really fine, saying the phone broken, and then someone grabs me and turns on and says, well, it's fine. We have law on the books already to enforce our immigration law. If you're in this country illegally, you need to be deported. Simple as plain as that. There are some things we need to do. We need to rescind birthright citizenship as well. If you were born in the United States of America and you are underneath the age of 18 years old, you are still legally the responsibility of the parent that birthed you. And if your parent is here illegally, that means you are here illegally and you need to go and your child needs to go with you.
So basically altering and changing the Constitution.
Oh, yes. Yes. I was so with Trump when he talked about doing that, because you are not going to leave and then leave us with the responsibility of caring for your child that you had here, knowing you came in this country illegally. They're taking advantage
known as anchor babies.
Right, exactly. They're taking anchor babies, right. They're taking advantage of birthright citizenship that was done for the citizens of American slave. Meanwhile, a lot of these illegal immigrants, wherever they come, but especially from Latin America, are extremely anti-Black. You don't need to take my word for it. Just read about let's look at the way they treat Afro-Latinos in their country, or look at the survey that was done by Duke University in 2006, where they went through several southern cities. One of them was Durham, North Carolina, and Greenville, South Carolina. 70% of Mexicans, basically all who were in the country illegally, said that Black Americans were criminalistic, troublemakers, bad neighbors, not hardworking, and a drain on society. How damn dare these invaders in a country we built, of which they're leeching off of resources, and they're benefiting from the civil rights movement. That's why they're able to still get a home, even though they're in the country legal, go to hospitals, go to school, because of the civil rights movement that we fought in Black that our grandparents did, so that we will be able to benefit from it. How dare them say such an offensive anti-Black American thing about us? Yes, some of us think these people are our friends. Meanwhile, white Americans, I never believed that. White Americans in that same interview, only 13% of them shared those extremely anti-Black views. So if we think white America has been anti-Black American, we ain't seen nothing yet with a lot of these Hispanic Latinos who are invading our nation as we speak. You do not reward. If you want to stop illegal immigration, if you want to stop any type of illicit, illegal behavior that is harmful, the first thing you don't do is reward it. I learned that as a teacher. You never reward any type of behavior that is harmful, because if you do, you will simply incentivize more of it. So no, if you came to this country illegally, hell no, you don't deserve citizenship. The only thing you deserve is to get your paper saying you're not welcome here, leave now. The second thing we need to do is, instead of going after the actual illegal immigrants, we have to go after these employers. Do not give into these.
That's the problem.
Right. We already know the Democrats have never met an illegal immigrant that they've never loved. We already know they're full of it. And it was up to them. Our country would be invaded right now. And everyone would be having to learn Spanish or whatever language from whatever other foreign group that's coming in. Chinese, a lot of Asians come here too.
Let me ask you this: Do you agree with Governor Abbott and Governor Ron DeSantis of what they're doing as transporting these illegal immigrants that's coming up from South America and Central America to what's most likely Democratic states and cities with a large population of Black people, with the exception of Martha's Vineyard? Do you agree that is the right way to how to handle the illegal immigration? Especially me living in Texas, I can understand there's an over influx in population of illegal immigrants. I had a guy in my house painting, where I couldn't find any Black painters. I'm pro-Black. I couldn't find any Black painters, but it was a guy in my house, 15 years of age, could paint. He couldn't even speak English. What are your thoughts about that?
It's hilarious, first of all. It's a good way. It's a good way to call the Democrats bluff. You love illegal immigrants so much, here, have them. But ultimately, that is not a sustainable way to deal with it. And I recently heard that Greg Abbott, who I'm not a fan of, but I recently heard that he is exercising some state level power that apparently he and some constitutional lawyers examined and found out that they can pretty much almost, I can't recall, use the National Guard or something like that.
No, they're using the National Guard, the state troopers, local police, and the Border Patrol agents.
That's what we need. Militarize the border. But I do want to go back. The most important thing is going after these employers. A lot of Republicans like to talk real tough about illegal immigration. Ask them if they're willing to start finding these damn employers or jailing them even if need be, and mandating E-Verify. Every single employer in this nation that has to employ anyone should be mandated to use E-Verify. And if not, they should be fined and they should be jailed. When you bring that up, see how these so-called Republicans who are against supposedly illegal immigration, see how they respond. Because a lot of times they're giving us political theater. They're talking like they're against illegal immigration, but when it's time to actually do legislation to stop it, mandating E-Verify, finding employers, jailing them is a possibility as well.
Absolutely. And it's a federal crime, not a state. It's a federal crime. Right.
They too start talking just like a Democrat who will have this country invaded and has never met an illegal immigrant they have not loved. We also need to, and this may sound harsh, but it is what it is. I agree with some Republicans who are really against illegal immigration that if you're in this nation illegally, you do not have the right to rent a home. You should not have that right. Why are you trying to rent a home in a nation where you are not allowed to live? You are not supposed to be here. So it's a combination. But the main thing, Ross, we have to go after the employers because ultimately that is what keeps them here. They will not be able to stay here if they do not have a job to provide for themselves. Oh, well, hell, I'm wrong now. Wait, you got New York City and DC rolling out the red carpet, feeding them, giving them 5-star hotel stays, cooking cuisine from their specific culture. So you have a chef that literally makes cuisine from their specific culture, while Black Americans in shelters get thrown into the cold. The illegal immigrants, New York City, whatever that guy's name is, Eric Adams, whatever his name is, spent billions of dollars to get day bags for illegal immigrants, to have television stations, PlayStation 5, the Nintendo Switch, snacks 24/7, exercise equipment. Then he's having them get meals catered to them 3 times a day, culturally relevant to them. So you're from Nicaragua, you get foods that are typical of Nicaraguans, that Nicaraguans eat. You're from Haitian, you're going to get a meal that's typical of a Haitian. If you're from Ukraine, which we know apparently Ukrainians are, Ukraine is Black, right. If you're Ukrainian, you're getting foods typical to Ukraine. While Black Americans are freezing in the streets. That should be illegal as well. Sanctuary cities should be made illegal, and anyone trying to do it should immediately be impeached and arrested.
Are you familiar with Mayor Lightfoot and what she's done?
Oh, she's
in the Woodland area in Chicago, where she's renovated a school just to house migrant. I think they said they were mostly Haitian, but some of the videos show them from Central America as well. What is your take on that?
She needs to be impeached or she needs to be jailed. Now, we really need to bring back the guillotine, and I'm not playing. You have Black Chicagoans who are descendants of people that have spent millions and billions of dollars into that city's economy, freezing. And Chicago is notoriously cold.
Notoriously cold.
Freezing. And you have let them stay on the street, hungry and homeless. But you requested billions of dollars to convert a school into a shelter for illegal immigrants who are not American citizens. Meanwhile, Black people in Chicago live in dire poverty, have housing insecurity, and are being displaced from well-paying jobs by illegal immigrants. Remember, it's a suburb of Chicago where illegal immigrants were working in this bakery, and a Black woman called ICE. They arrested somewhere like thousands of illegal immigrants and deported them. And the Black people the next day got those jobs and still have those jobs now. And yet Lori Lightfoot is sitting there pretty much co-signing and incentivizing the invasion and displacement of Black Americans. Then people got mad when Trump said this, but I was with him when he said this. And if I wasn't so emotionally undisciplined when dealing with Trump, we could have really had an opportunity to do some great things. Trump said, when you look at places like Chicago, he was like, you see all this crime happening. He was like, who's to say who's really committed it? They don't know these illegal immigrants. They don't know their records. He was really talking about MS-13, but he made a good point. The crime rates start going up. No one's ever apprehended for these crimes. And he was like, who's to say it's not them? They come over here illegally. You have no record of them. You can't trace them. And yet, suddenly, they come in these areas and the crime rate soars. These Democrats will tell you that illegal immigrants have a lower level of committing crimes than an American-born citizen. I will tell you that's BS, because if you're illegal in this country, you commit a crime every day you're in this country. So that right there is BS now.
Let me switch gears here, because I know the immigration, we can go into a deep, dark black hole with immigration. I mean,
yes,
believe me, I've done my research extensively with that. But what is your plan for transportation for South Carolina? And what do you think will be the plan for America going forward if it were to model what you have in store?
So one of the things I'm very, very proud of is my car buyer assistance program that I developed. And everyone tells me, I've never heard of a plan like this before. This is really creative, where qualifying recipients, which of course I haven't ironed out the criteria yet, but qualifying recipients will get assistance, because I live in a rural area. People always think, oh, urban. There are still plenty of Americans that live in rural areas. And I need people to stop thinking a small rural area means white Americans. No, there are plenty of Black Americans who are country and who still live in rural areas. And when you do not have a vehicle, a car in a rural area, literally it's a quality of life issue. You can't get to the grocery store. You can't get to your job. You can't get to an interview. You can't go shop for clothes. You can't get to doctor's appointments. You can't go to a parent-teacher conference. You can't go out to see a play, to the movies. Literally, you are cut off from society. So my plan is a person who qualifies will get help with a down payment for their vehicle. They may get it fully covered. They're getting assistance, almost like what we do in some housing programs. They will get their first 3 months of payment covered. And the same, we have an EBT card where people get assistance with food. We will have a maintenance fee card where people can get assistance with wear and tear on their vehicles. So if the shocks need to be replaced, brakes, oil change, they will go to qualifying auto mechanics, because I will partner with small businesses. A lot of Black Americans, mainly men, and white Americans, mainly men, have auto garages, and I will partner with them, bring them a part of the network. Say when you have a network of doctors and clinics to whom a person can go to get attention to their health, I will have a network of auto garages to whom a person can go to get their car maintenance, and they will just give them the card, and the visit will be covered for certain parts of a vehicle. Now, for America, I really do want to expand public transportation. Now, I've been on New York City subways before, and it was a nightmare. That's not my vision of public transportation. Dirty, unsafe, no. My idea of public transportation is that I want to make, because everyone doesn't want to live in a city or have people piled on top of them or go outside the house and they're surrounded by other people. Some people like the rural quality of life. But we have to have resources accessible for people. So I want to make it to whereas buses in rural areas who often can't come to rural areas because it's just not economically feasible, or they come just once a day or twice a day. I want to incentivize these public transportation companies serving rural areas more. I want to introduce more walkability into rural areas. Once upon a time in America, communities were a lot more connected because we walked to the market, we walked to the bowling alley, and we got to know our neighbors better. I want to make neighborhoods more walkable. I want to expand public transportation in urban areas, suburban areas, and rural areas. But I want to make sure that public transportation is of high quality, and that people who abuse and infringe upon the rights of others taking public transportation are swiftly and harshly dealt with as they should be. So Absolutely. I want to envision America where it's more walkable, more bike trails, so that people don't have to rely on a vehicle as much. I'm not trying to take anybody's car from them, okay? I want to make it, though, where if you do not want to use your vehicle for that day, you can walk to the movie theater. You can walk to the grocery store, or the bus comes to your area several times a day, so that if your car needs to be maintenance and needs to stay in the shop, you are not cut off from society like so many people, not just white Americans live in rural America, Black Americans and people of other backgrounds are when their vehicles are not operable.
All right. Now I have a couple of questions that I gathered from.
Ross, may I say something real quick? I left a big,
go ahead.
The other part of that is I plan to do tax write-offs for people who live in rural areas. If they have to drive, because we have food deserts and healthcare deserts are a huge problem in my district. Something like 80% of Black Americans in my district live in food deserts. 80%. Healthcare deserts.
What do you mean by food deserts?
It means an area where in 10 to 20 miles, there are no grocery stores available that have access to fresh foods. So even a store like a Family Dollar wouldn't count because those foods are mainly processed. They're talking about grocery stores that can sell fresh produce and things of that nature. Food deserts are a major problem. I want to make it to as where if a person lives in a rural area and they have to commute to go grocery shopping, they have to commute to get to a clinic or hospital, they can be eligible for a tax write-off. So that way they can have money that will otherwise just go into their gas tank to put back into their rural economies, because rural economies need industry.
That's a great policy.
And this will help them to put money into the economy and maybe start a business in their rural area to bring industry there.
Absolutely. That sounds like a really good policy.
Thank you.
Now, I have some questions that I got from a group from Clubhouse that they would like to know some of the answers to this. They said, would you consider running for a lower office considering your last run numbers?
I have.
Will you be, is that something in your next steps moving forward, or you still be running for?
No, I'm still going for federal. We are in a crisis. I don't have time to be running for a seat on town council. I don't have time to run for a seat on the school board. State level, still insufficient. The needs of our people are extreme. We are in a crisis. I don't have time for no 10-year, 15-year plan. You know, first you run local, you serve 5 years. We don't have no 5 years. We don't even have 2 years. We are already behind. We are already out of time. If we were any other group, we would be extinct. It's only because we are Black Americans, descendants of American slaves, that we have not gone extinct yet. Not necessarily physically, but economically and politically. And then you go extinct physically. So no, because the needs of our people are so great, I'm going to continue to run. You want to win when you run, obviously.
Absolutely.
But you can win the race even if you've lost the election. I just left yesterday from a reparations training here in South Carolina that I helped to produce and help to execute. The South Carolina Democratic Party spent thousands of dollars to make this training happen. And we are now developing It's not a reparations task force officially, but we are now building people who are either going to serve as campaign organized reparationists, or they're either going to run as reparationists themselves, or they're going to be the team for reparationist candidates here in South Carolina, running at the local level. So there's that local, the state level, federal level. So that would not have happened had I not ran for office. I doubt it would have. Now, the South Carolina Democratic Party, all they talk about now is reparations. A congressman here in South Carolina has agreed to work with me on reparations. These people were ignoring me before, but because I ran for office, some may respect me because they said this guy really put some skin in it. He really sacrificed and did it. Like, what person just wakes up and says, I'm running for office, never did it before and did it? Not just that, though. Time Magazine even contacted me to talk about reparations. When usually I get a phone call from a newspaper, they give you 10 minutes. Okay, got to go by. This woman from Time Magazine had me on the phone for almost 2 hours. So I probably lost my election. Probably. We'll talk about that later. But okay. I didn't lose the race, because now, the first time in South Carolina's modern history, yesterday and Friday, we had an event exclusively sponsored by a political party dedicated to reparations. That was not happening before I ran.
Well, let me ask you this. What have you learned from your last run, and how has it changed your strategy moving forward?
Not to rely on people. That's the main lesson. Don't rely on people. Don't run saying because you're running on a platform of Black Americans that you're going to automatically get their support. That's one thing I've learned. Second thing is you really do need money. Really does win a race. I hate to say it. Now, there have been people with a lot of money and they've been defeated by candidates who had less, but that candidate had less money, still had money. So money really is really the fuel in the gas tank of a campaign. You have to get money for the exposure, especially in a rural area. I hate when people write to me and say, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez did it. Look at her. She lives in the Bronx. All 700,000 people is about the average for a U.S. congressional district. But in the Bronx, 700,000 people probably live within 3 to 4 blocks. So she can walk down the street and campaign every day and get her word out. Not for me. I'm in a rural area. My district is 4 hours north and south and 3 hours east to west to east. And people are spread out all over. And I have very little money. The last 2 weeks of my campaign, I ran commercials back to back to back, to the point where people was like, I saw you on TV. But they didn't know why I was on TV. They didn't know about my race. They just knew they saw me on TV. So exposure is so important. But commercials, billboards, yard signs, flyers, mailers, those things cost a hell of a lot of money. And money is the ring that keeps the campaign going. It's the fuel in the tank. The next thing I learned is people really don't have any idea how hard it is to campaign, period, but especially in a rural area. Everyone will be telling me, do this, do this, do this. I'm like, okay, that works if you're in an urban area. In rural areas, you don't have, a lot of times, parks where large numbers of people gather. You don't have, right, it's a huge difference. The last thing I learned is one vote makes a difference. One vote makes a difference. That's one person you recruited onto your message. The only way you're sure to lose a race or an election is if you don't run at all. That's it. Every vote for you is a win. That's a person who said, I like your platform and I'm with you. And if you are truly more about your platform than you are about your personality, then you want your platform, your message to be the thing that wins. I don't have to be the person that makes the U.S. Congress on my platform. But if one of those thousands of people that voted for me is the person and they make it, then I've won as far as I'm concerned.
Now, have you identified partners, other candidates that may run with you and support you, possibly in lower offices, and especially on a financial level?
Financially? No. That's money is always going to be hard. No,
I'm saying partners who are willing to invest in you on a long-term basis to get you into office.
Financially, that's the hardest thing. No, a lot of these ones that I've identified, well, see, that's another thing in South Carolina. We don't have all these nonprofits. Like, if I was running in New York City or maybe even Georgia, No, we have very little of those, and most of those are 501c3s, so they cannot invest in a candidate. And the few that are 501c4, the 501c7s, they're up behind so high, their nose is rubbing against his heart. So they're not going to do nothing for me. I have identified lower level candidates. One is the lady with whom I was in the video, Nicola Hempfield. She's running as mayor of a very small town called Waynesboro. Very small, very impoverished, extremely neglected. There are some other candidates, but I don't want to put their name out there because, we are still talking on the back channel, even though I've supported them. And when I meet them in person, they're not shy about supporting me, but our relationship is still growing and forming and solidifying. Another thing I learned is you do have to have relationships. When I first started, I thought I was, I'm going to do it myself. And I quickly learned, no, you do have to have partners. But it is better to have no one than have relationships with people who are toxic or working against you. So I have a network now. I'm proud to say, the me that started, I'm different now. I have actual politicians now who support me, who are not afraid, like they were before, to be seen in public with me, to announce that, yeah, they're working with me. So a lot has changed. In 6 months, I went from being a pariah, which I'm sure I still am, and I'm proud to be the pariah because I'm standing up for what's right. But now people are like, I like this guy. Or, people write me in my inboxes now. Other politicians like, I want to work with you. Republicans too, and Democrats. White and black. People in South Carolina and not in South Carolina. Now, I have Nicola Hempfield. I have a state congressman, Marvin Pendarvis, who has agreed to work with me to do some things on the state level. I have Rashawn Lewis, who the reason I really took to him is because when I was at this candidate forum, I was like, well, that was me. But then I looked at his platform, and he was the only person that said, it was kind of vague. It was giving me all eyes matter vibe, but something in his heart is special because he was the only person that had on there racial injustice. None of these other black candidates said a damn thing about anything racism-wise. So when I saw that, I wrote him because it was virtual. I was like, you support reparations for the descendants of American slaves? He was like, of course. I was like, okay, I'm asking because you put on there racial injustice, very vague. I want to be split up. He was like, yeah, I may not use the term, but I do. Right. And the fact that he was the only, and here's the thing about him, Rashawn Lewis, and unlike me, he's very popular and very well liked. I'm popular. I'm popular. I got the popular part now. The well liked part. Anyway, though.
So let me. Before I answer this last question, I just want to give a shout out to all the subscribers and viewers that we have here today. OG Mods, Derby Swag. I see my good buddy TD Hip Hop Media. Thanks for the love offering, brother. I do appreciate that. For everyone, go and subscribe to TD Hip Hop Media. The brothers on code. Jermaine Anderson, thank you for moderating, sir. So I think one of the most important questions. Some other people have some questions about Ukrainians. Go ahead. Go ahead.
About Rashawn Lewis. The thing that really made me impressed with him is that he was running on a platform that had racial injustice, but he was running in a majority white district. You got black candidates in South Carolina running majority black that you can't get them to say anything about anti-blackness. He did. So I'm not going to say he and I work together, but we definitely support each other.
Well, I think one of the most important questions that the viewers would like to know here, Marcel, especially you running on the reparations tick and you being a strong advocate for reparations for U.S. freedmen, descendants of American slaves, also known as Foundation Black Americans, is reparations. What are reparations for U.S. freedmen? Why is it owed to us and how it should be paid?
Reparations is a debt that the federal government owes descendants of American slaves. That means black people who can trace their ancestry to a person being here at the time of the Emancipation Proclamation and the end of the Civil War. Now, if your family member came during Jim Crow and you're black, that's a separate issue. The debt starts with slavery and continues thereafter. If you weren't here with slavery, then you came and you experienced some anti-blackness, I'm sure you did, that's a separate issue. So the federal government owes us reparations. It does not come from white people. So no, it's not a tax on white people. It's not about making white people pay. It is not going to cause inflation. It is not going to raise anyone's taxes. Those are lies that are told, and the government can afford it easily. Number two, it's a direct payment. And the amount that I've come up with by studying the work of many economists and historians like Dr. Darity and Mrs. Kirsten Mullen and Dr. Kramer is $2.8 million per descendant of American slave. That's the amount. And what my plan calls
for
is
about $16 trillion.
Huh?
Is it about $16 trillion?
70 trillion. 70 trillion. Yes, 70 trillion. And it is $2.8 million per descendant of American slave. And my plan calls for us to be paid in U.S. Treasury bonds. That's those yellow dollars that people like me are too poor to ever have, but U.S. Treasury bonds. And the U.S. government.
Why in U.S. Treasury bonds and not in American fiat?
So because of my plan and the work with economists that I did, if you were to pay 50-something million people almost $3 million all at once, and even though I'm not one of those inflation hawks, inflation, that would indeed cause hyperinflation. So the way my plan, and I tell people, if you have a better plan, I'd love to hear it. But the way my plan with my team, we realize to avoid that is to give everyone U.S. Treasury bonds, and the U.S. government will pay us interest on it every single month. And that will call for somewhere like between $169,000 to $200,000 per month per descendant of American slave per head. Don't matter. So there's 5 descendants of American slaves. Each 5 gets like $169,000 per year. And we will get those payments for the rest of our lives. Okay. And the reason is anyone that has an issue with reparations for descendants of American slaves, they are obviously anti-Black American because they're not complaining about reparations that were done for the Japanese in 1988. They're not mad about the reparations being done right now
for the Native Americans.
For people, Joe Crow just renewed it, the Radiation Compensation Exposure Act, where people who are exposed to radiation via means of nuclear testing in America, they or their spouses or their loved ones get direct payments. It's been going on since the 1990s. People in Guam just got reparations in 2016 because of some being kept as prisoners of war and during World War II. A lot of those people were dead. So it was paid to their children or their grandchildren or surviving spouse. They're not complaining about reparations that are being paid to Native Americans pretty much giving them money to their governments and they can spend how they see please. One Native American tribe is so rich, no one has to work ever, and they get $1 million in cash per year. I can go on. No one's complaining about the fact that America helped stop the Holocaust. Like my great-grandfather, who is still alive, who was a World War II vet, came back to America and was robbed of what he should have gotten from the GI Bill. Yet America has helped to pay reparations to Holocaust survivors, but not to the Black soldiers who are the descendants of American slaves who helped to stop the Holocaust. If we cannot have a system where it's justice for some and not justice for you, it's either justice for all or it's justice for none. Because
hold on, Marcel. Hold on. How can America pay all of these people, right? And especially if they pay us our reparation, how do we have the money? I know a lot of people will be crying about tax dollars, this, that, and the other, but how does America have the money to fund foreign budgets and international funding holdings, and as well as give all these reparations to these other countries? How is America paying for all this when we are, 20-something, 30-something trillion dollars in debt?
So here's how. One, let me just preface it. The same way they paid in 2014 the Iranian hostages $4.4 million per person.
Yep.
America is a monetary sovereign. Every chairman of the Federal Reserve, Ben Bernanke, for example, has been on record, Alan Greenspan, and said that the U.S. government can never run out of money. He was talking to Paul Ryan. And you know, Paul Ryan was one of those, the debt type guys. And Paul Ryan said, what about the debt? What about inflation? He said, debt is imaginary in a fiat system. This is what Greenspan said. He said, debt in a fiat system is really numbers on a computer. I am not Alan Greenspan, but let me tell you about that. America has canceled debt plenty of times before. World War I, World War II, America canceled millions, in our today's value, billions of dollars in debt for World War I, World War II. And at the same time, America gave billions of dollars to Europe and Eastern Asia in Marshall plans to rebuild them. Okay, so America can generate as much money as it needs to pay whatever amount that it needs to pay. Proof of that, the New Deal. Roosevelt was only able to save the American economy because he generated money that the American economy needed to pay for jobs, get federal jobs guarantee, and to pay for federal programs, and to pay for mortgages and people who are about to lose their homes to stop the rampant homelessness. To Obama. Obama spent $29 trillion in a few years on the banks alone. That's not including what he paid on the auto industry. That's not including what he paid for the airline industry. Okay? That's not including
or even the money he gave to the Jews for the Holocaust.
Exactly. But that's also not including the $300 million a month we were paying for the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Trump paid trillions of dollars in the PPP loan package alone, which, by the way, that was trillions of dollars, and America is canceling most of that debt. So absolutely. America can cancel that. So I need people to stop acting like that is some dry or dire thing when America canceled that all the time and did. And meanwhile, Trump, our money does not come from taxes. If it did, how was Trump able to spend trillions of dollars in a PPP loan, trillions of dollars in doubling the amount of unemployment per month, 300 to 600? How was Trump able to bail out the airline industry and other industries that would have crashed had he not acted? Absolutely. He was still paying $300 million per month for Afghanistan and Iraq war. And then he was spending billions of dollars to invest, to create these vaccines, to promote them, to distribute them. And Trump had cut taxes to his lowest level era with the American Tax and Jobs Act. Taxes are still at their lowest level historically. So if taxes came, if the federal money came from taxes, how the hell was Trump able to spend all that extra money while cutting tax to his lowest rate ever? That's because Trump knows, as all of those people in Congress know, but never want to admit, that federal dollars does not come from taxes. Yes, the federal government collects taxes. And guess what they do when they collect it? They simply put it into a surplus for the Federal Reserve to spend. All America has to do to get more money is for the Federal Reserve to approve them for a loan, and then they simply generate it and send it to the banks in the Federal Reserve. America does it all the time.
Okay, most importantly, what is reparations? We kind of covered that, but how should it be paid? Is it land grants? Is it loan forgiveness? Is it educational loans or low interest loans or grants? Is it cash payments? What is reparations? The total package, if you could package it up for us.
So in my plan, it's really all of the above. Now, educational stuff, I feel college and university should be free anyway, just like healthcare. So that's neither here nor there. But for reparations, direct monetary payments. Okay? Land grants, which with my plan.
So what is the first thing? You're saying cash payments is the first thing.
Yeah, that's the first thing. That is usually pure reparations. When people think reparation is monetary compensation for wrong done by a government entity, but also land grants. Okay, there's plenty of rural land in the South. Black Americans are returning to the South. 62% of us already live in the South. A lot of us already have homes that we're struggling to keep. Land grants would either be paying off their homes that they have, or the incentivizing the return to the South of Black Americans, because the South is our ancestral, spiritual, cultural home. Next thing, business grants. I call that my Black Wall Street initiative. We will have to go to a business class. No, I'm not one of those people that say we need to be trained before we get our money, but I want us to go to a business class.
We don't need financial literacy before we get our money?
Absolutely not. No, because white Americans who have been rich have crashed the economy several times. I don't see no one say, no, we're not going to pay you to get your money, so no. So business grant, I call that my Black Wall Street plan. You have to develop a business plan, and then you're given a business grant, and we're going to bring back our Black Wall Street. Secondly, the Freedmen's Bureau is going to be our own agency of the government. Native Americans
It's like
have
the Indian Affairs Bureau for Native
exactly
Americans.
like the Bureau of Indian Affairs. The Freedmen's Bureau was supposed to be that, but we know corrupt white people got rid of it. I'm going to bring back the Freedmen's Bureau, but this time it will not be under the auspices of the government. It will be a separate entity. However, the federal government, just like they do for these Native American governments, they will simply give us the money we need, and we, because we will be the only people, descendants of American slaves, freemen, we will be the only people allowed to work in the Freedmen's Bureau. We will make sure that the money is distributed the way to meet our needs. And the Freedmen's Bureau will set up Freedmen hospitals throughout the nation, Freedmen schools. They will use the budget they get to bring back Freedmen's banks, and they will also help to address other issues in which there are discrepancies between American freedmen and white Americans, such as hiring discrepancies in fields where we have the degrees and we have the knowledge, but are not getting the jobs.
Okay. Last question here, Marcel.
I'm going to say that, but also tax exemption on the federal level.
Oh, absolutely.
And that also brings with it a special class protection.
Last but not least, would you be willing, or had you considered, to run as a conservative versus Democrat?
I mean,
because of your views, essentially.
I am. I mean, people already consider me a conservative, so I've been doing that. I've always stood fast on my views, and people have always said that you're basically a Republican. I said, no, I'm not. I said, let me tell you something. Republicans don't have the market on conservatism, and the Democrats don't have the market on liberalism. I am not going to get into any of their little rigid categories. I'm a reparationist. As a reparationist, what dictates how I move is what's best for descendants of American slaves, Black Americans. And what's best for Black Americans is going to be best for all of America. But if people are asking me, would I run as a Republican? If the Republican Party was the party that was getting 90% of my people's vote and neglecting my people, I will be at the Republican Party. I don't like any of these parties. The reason I'm running as a Democrat.
So what you're doing is strategic.
Exactly. The reason I'm running as a Democrat, because they get all of the Black American vote, basically. And yet for 60 years, we're doing worse now than we were during the days of Jim Crow. So I am saying I'm going to exert pressure on the party that deserves the accountability from us. You get our vote, you will get our accountability. But I'm not going to do it from the outside, throwing tomatoes at the windows. That gets nowhere. I'm going to run right in the party, and I'm going to exert pressure on them from the inside. But how I run and what I do, who knows? But for right now, I'm going to make sure that Democrats know that I'm going to be there inside the house with you, holding you accountable for your neglect of my people.
Marcel Dixon for Congress. Brother, it's been a pleasure once again. I do want to make people familiar with your website and how to donate. The website is Marcel for Congress. And in order for you to support this brother, you hit donate. You come down here. You can either donate one time, weekly, or monthly. You can either do $100, $500, or $1,000, or you can do a custom amount. Right. I always like to donate to the brother because he is literally sacrificing his time. He's sacrificing his life in order to make foundational Black Americans / U.S. freedmen get the money that we are owed from this government. Do you have any last comments, Marcel?
I just want to say, like I've always said, I'm here not to do what is popular, not to do what is easy. I'm here to concern myself with and to do what is right. So backlash from any group does not bother me at all. And I would like to encourage others to do what is right. And I can promise you, supporting me, I'm always going to do my damnedest to do the right thing. I might fail sometimes, but you will always know it was in the fight to do the right thing. And I need people to help me do that, especially with their donations. And if you can subscribe and do weekly or monthly donations, that's great. If you can find other people and tell them about me and ask them to donate, that's great. Because it really does take money. Clyburn cannot defeat me on policy. He can't defeat me on record. He only defeats me because he has money. And that's not just Clyburn. That's how a lot of these awful people stay in office, because they have money. But they have money. We have the people. We have y'all.
You know how important this is to Marcel? It's because when I search your name, Twitter, which everyone you should follow Marcel Dixon on Twitter. But nonetheless, when I type in your name, there's a lot of people essentially trying to put dirt in your name, and it's important that we keep you in the public view so people understand that the power and the truth and the words that you speak versus these cronies out here for the Democratic Party trying to minimize and undermine you behind closed doors, so to speak, but in the public space when it comes to social media. So that's why I love interviewing you, because you're like the hallmark of reparations. Now we have little enclaves around the country that's fighting for reparations, but you are essentially the face of reparation and what it should look like going forward when it comes to federal government.
Well, thank you, Frost, and thank you for having me. And I always enjoy being here.
Yes, sir. Thank everyone for joining here today. This is Blacklogic, and we are out, ladies and gentlemen.